Facilities that make this program possible are provided by the City of Highland Park. Programs are produced independently by members of the community. The City of Highland Park is not affiliated with the following program or the producers of public access programming and is not responsible for the content. The following program does not reflect the opinions of the City of Highland Park.
Welcome to Chill Out. I'm Pam Chill. I'm one of the senior producers with Highland Park Senior Producers Senior Center. And today's program is about different views of the Me Too movement and how it's incorporated into our daily lives and the corporate world. I'm very fortunate to have on my panel today. We'll start with you, Joyce Bernstein, who's also host of her own show, 30 Minutes with Joyce. Welcome. Thank you for participating on the panel.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And Dr. Suzanne Conman, who is a psychologist and also host of her own show, Conman's Roundtable. And you're also moderator of current events at the Highland Park Library.
Oh, the Highwood Library.
Highwood Library, yes.
Next door to Highland Park.
Next door to Highland Park,
At
yes.
the Highwood Library.
Very, very good. So, ladies, let's start with, what do you think is going on with the Me Too movement? You want to do a brief overview of what's happening and trending right now with it?
Well, I could start because there was an article that I just want to quote from the Miami Herald. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they're talking about now is a male backlash against the Me Too movement. And it's brewing, according to the New York Post. And they said that female staffers and lobbyists have found that many male legislatures will no longer meet with them privately. And a senator told the lobbyist, Jennifer Green, after she asked him why he could not see her without a chaperone present, and he responded by telling her anyone can say anything with the door shut. So I'm just wondering, are women going back 20 years? It took them a long time to be equal with the male, with men, and now they're taking a step backwards because legislatures and different companies, like CEOs of companies, will no longer want to have a woman present by herself. She either has to be accompanied by another female, or maybe she's just not getting the job. And also traveling with men on conferences, there's been a backlash against them also.
I've also checked on the internet too, and you are absolutely correct in what you are saying, that it has affected every aspect. It's affected the hotel business. A lot of people are postponing or not doing conventions. They're doing conference calls, they're doing Skype, they're working with people, they're flying in people to do local meetings, and they're not having that whole convention aspect of a lot of corporations, because too much can happen during a convention. And when people are traveling, they have to make sure that there are chaperones if there is a man and a woman who are traveling together.
Mm-hmm. I personally think it's getting a little too carried away. I mean, everything is being called attention to, and often it isn't even necessary. I've always had to have, when I went to a doctor or dentist, they always had another person in the room also, just to say nothing happened. Although that could be paid off too, as far as that goes.
Well, right. Witnesses, chaperones, transparency, a lot of we were talking about also when they're doing architecture of new offices, they're doing all glass. So there is no, issue of people not knowing what has happened between a locked door or a closed door.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So that's a new way that people are doing things.
People are remembering things that happened. I happen to think of something that happened to me like maybe 30, 40 years ago. I mean, I could bring it up now, and I prefer not to because it's a very personal matter. But I just think things are getting out of hand. I mean, people could say things, it doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering why they're bringing up things like from years ago. Why did they just deal with it, you know, during the time that it happened?
Unless they just feel people are listening now. For once, women are getting, being able to say what they think. People didn't give them attention for a lot of
Right.
things.
I spoke with some, you know, friends and some different women on the topic of why are a lot of people remembering what happened 30, 40, even 50 years ago?
Right.
And they said they didn't have a voice then. That
That's
no
true.
one would listen to them, or there would be reprisals of something happening. They would lose their job, or they wouldn't be taken seriously. It would affect their relationship, their work environment.
Yeah, everybody wants to be on the bandwagon now. Let's join the group, you know.
But,
Right.
but then there are some things that are also going not okay, like this with Stormy Daniels, for instance. I mean, she's bringing up something that was a consensual type of thing. And I always felt that the Me Too movement isn't about consent. It was about people, men, taking advantage of a woman against her will. That's what the Me Too movement is, not somebody that has consensual, you know, relations. So I'm trying to figure out why this is really happening. You know, what has she got to do with the Me Too movement?
That is a very good question, because initially the one who did, she founded the movement in 2006, and it was Ms. Burke, Ms. Burke, who founded it in 2006, but it didn't gain notoriety until it was endorsed by Alyssa Milano, the actress. So
Oh, really? Was she the one?
Yes, so she gave really credence to the movement. And last year, 2017, was the year that brought down a lot of very, very high-profile gentlemen. Last as of today, 97 men and 1 woman have been toppled, their careers completely turned around since the movement began in 2017.
Interesting. So the woman that was involved was taking advantage herself of young male employees?
That I don't know what had happened. I think it might have been what's known as collateral damage. You know, I think we were discussing that a little bit before because we had an opportunity to go to lunch, but that not indirectly her name was involved.
Interesting.
Oh.
Because she was a facilitator of some things that had transpired.
Oh.
I guess you talked about, we had lunch together, and we mentioned something about Harvey Weinstein and the woman that used to bring in other women. They thought they were being interviewed for the job, and you mentioned that
Yes.
she had committed.
She's the one who committed suicide.
Oh.
Because you know, she just couldn't live with what had happened. The media had really taken her whole position and what she'd done, and we're only presenting one way of doing this. So a lot of it is the media has really focused on the Me Too movement. Without that, nothing would have happened, nothing would have transpired. But they're, you know, allowing everybody to have their story, whether their allegations are, I'm sure most of them are true, you know, and then they start substantiating by, you know, different people coming aboard, and, you know, you have 3 or 4 women accusing a fellow of, you know, in the press it's taken all avenues. I mean, we had everybody from Harvey Weinstein to Steve Wynn to Charlie Rose to Matt Lauer to, you know, every corporation has had someone almost who's been accused of some type of sexual misconduct.
Yeah, men have lost their jobs. Programs have been canceled. I mean, they're really carrying it to the extreme, too.
And it's even, I was reading an article from a recent magazine, a Chicago magazine actually, on how to laugh in the Me Too era, and it's being brought into the comedy clubs, and that's how movement is changing, how the comics are interacting in comedy clubs, things that were appropriate or it was fun to say, you know, since Louis C.K., you know, he, you know, another person that got into that accused after exposing himself, and into the comedy clubs, what they can say and what they can't say, what's funny and what's offensive. So it's reaching out even into these comedy clubs.
Absolutely, and we can't go into the way of doing any kind of victim shaming. That's we have to be very, very careful of that. And by using it as a joke, that is shaming the victim. So I think that humor has changed. The Me Too movement has definitely put a line between what is politically correct, what is politically incorrect, what is appropriate, what is inappropriate behavior. So you have to be mindful. That's why we're talking about also human resources, education.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned something earlier that I thought that this should be, since you said education, I think that they should be speaking into the high schools, maybe starting with middle schools, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and what's appropriate, what people say, what they can touch, what they can't touch, and so young people could be prepared, and if this happens on their jobs, they'll know what to do because they're educated, with this movement, and they'll know what to say and what not to say, and what's appropriate for them and what's not appropriate when it comes to their boss or a fellow person, another person that's employed in the same office. They'll know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
And you have to be very careful of your verbiage and your mannerisms. If you compliment somebody, you're only complimenting their work, not their physique in any way, not their clothing in any way.
But and years ago, it was kind of nice when somebody said, "Gee, you're wearing like I'm wearing a very colorful jacket today," and somebody said, "Gee, I like your jacket. It's really, really pretty. It's very colorful." And I would say it. I would think of it as a compliment. Or you have a new hairstyle, Suzanne. I think you look really cute in it. That to me was a compliment. But you have to figure out now. A guy is saying that he, maybe just wants to say it's something nice, and then he's afraid to say it because, oh my God, what if I say her hair's nice or her jacket's nice? She'll think I'm coming on to her, and then she's going to go to her boss or the, down in the, into the department and report me.
Absolutely. And shaking hands. Okay, shaking hands is acceptable. And then I was also reading on the internet, let's say you haven't seen a coworker and they've been ill and you want to give them a big hug.
Yeah.
It's unacceptable. Not an embrace.
But isn't it, are we going back? I mean, it's so nice when things were warm and cozy and things were just, it made me feel just to do it, just to feel comfortable in giving somebody a hug. Like I think teachers in school sometimes want to hug their kids, and now they're afraid if they hug, they're going to get reported.
Yes.
And, what is acceptable now? Why are we really going back in time? And what, it seems something doesn't sound right.
I think it became one extreme over the other. And it looks like this is the way that it is going. Human resources, they have contractual agreements, they put on moral obligations that you have to do in order to have a job now. And if you deviate from that and if you're reported, that's cause for dismissal.
Right.
And it may or may not even happen in the workplace. If something is found out, you have a moral obligation to that company in that position that you're in. If people are even dating, a lot of people are doing contractual agreements. They're doing consensual relationships. So people can't come back, especially if somebody has a high-profile position, they can't come back 10 years later and say that it wasn't consensual.
I know I go to a class one day a week. It's at the senior center, and they talk about current events and everything. And one man it's mostly men there, but one man was complimenting another woman and myself, there's only a few women, that if we went out, we could find a man interested in us sexually within a half hour. And this lady friend of mine said, how could you even sit near him? What a thing, he said. I said, personally, I was flattered. But anyway, there's different ways to look at it.
Right.
I mean,
I guess it's your age group too. I mean, if we get compliment because we're a little bit older, we're
Yes.
seniors, not that old, just so young seniors.
Young
Okay.
seniors,
We're
yes,
young
is what we
seniors.
are.
I mean, hey, that's kind of, it's flattering to us. But then somebody at a younger age, maybe they're 50 or their late 40s, 50, they find it offensive. So I, in a way, I feel sorry for a lot of men right now because they don't know what to do. If they say this, it flatters one person. If they say the same thing to another person, they're coming on and it's offensive. So there's going to be a lot of, in their minds, what to do. They're going to,
Right.
it's not going to feel natural. Or I think I was looking before for the word spontaneous. We can't do things that are spontaneous anymore.
Right. You have to think about every word that you say.
Yeah.
Is it appropriate? Every joke that you tell, what ramifications is it going to
This
have?
woman
Right.
was my age, but she found it very offensive, and I didn't.
Oh, no.
I didn't.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I know a
didn't take
doctor
it
told me a joke,
seriously,
too.
though.
And I told him not to do that. You
Yes.
could say it in front of me, but don't ever say that joke in front of anyone else because
No.
it's offensive.
Yeah, I know
It's-
there's a
yes.
rabbi at a certain temple, and when he walks around with the Torah, that's one of the procedures for people not familiar with it, he kisses each woman in line. And I mean, I never thought of it that way, but people would find that offensive. Now, each time he passes a woman, he gives them a kiss on the cheek, and I don't think he was just being friendly. There's a different rabbi there I consider cold. He hardly acknowledges the people, but he just doesn't miss a woman without kissing them. But
Yes, see, that's
Yeah.
for you, that was nice, and maybe I would like that, or maybe Pam would like that,
yeah,
but
this
after
is
somebody,
different than that other
They would
man
feel
was talking
uncomfortable
about.
by it.
Yeah,
Yes.
but nobody seemed to. But it seems like he hasn't done quite as much lately. Maybe somebody said something to him.
It's
or
quite
something.
possible.
Yes,
It's quite
yes.
possible.
yeah, because every time I go see one of my doctors, he gives me a hug. And I think, gee, that is so nice. That's being warm, that's being friendly. I don't think it, I find that where I'll go to another doctor and they, right away they sit at their computer and barely, I had a doctor that I had to say, he sat at his computer the whole time and then he said, okay, thank you. And I said, doctor, you forgot to examine me. And he said, oh, that's right. I mean, look what's happening.
One doctor said to me, it's a woman, when you're cured, come back. Cured, isn't that what she's supposed to be there for? I don't even want to go to her anymore. She never touches me either. I have to go to a different doctor who examines me.
Right. So,
And that's a woman yet with a woman.
We're
And-
becoming a society, you're talking about, where people really, you brush up against somebody and it's an invasion of their privacy.
Yes, yes.
Yes, so
I usually jump when somebody touches me.
everything can be misconstrued, but you may be
Yeah.
getting a lot of children who are growing up in
Yeah.
that environment where everything is there's a difference between inappropriate and appropriate behavior.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah,
that's one of the
and how
things
do
that's
you-
happening.
I mean,
one of the
do you accuse everybody of everything they do? And I mean,
yeah, I mean, where's the line? Where do
Yeah,
you
the
cross
line.
it? When can it be construed as somebody that's giving you a hug? Hey, I haven't seen you. I'm so happy to see you. I'm glad that you're here. And another person thinking that same hug is offensive and it's crossing the boundary line. And it's very confusing. And
doctors always shake your hand when you come in to see your doctor.
But I'm talking not just being
Yeah, I
a
know.
doctor, anybody.
Yeah, I know.
What do you do? I mean, how, it's getting very confusing for people.
Well, what do we? I don't know what the guidelines are. When you're in the corporate world, they have human resources. What can be done, what
Yes.
can't be done. They're all reevaluating their human resources. Any of their contractual agreements. What's appropriate behavior, what's not appropriate behavior. Everything that has to be you know, if people go on vacation or whatever, and they're going to, like we talked about, a meeting, you know, everything has to go through human resources now. Small companies that don't have human resources, you know, you're talking about a small independent proprietor, you know, maybe a doctor who's, you know, not affiliated with a hospital practice, or a dentist, or someone else that, you know, they just have to be mindful of the fact that anything could be misconstrued. So
Now,
it's better to avoid, you know, instead of getting too in an interpersonal
But now
relationship.
we mentioned, we also were talking about Catherine Deneuve, you know, the actress.
Right.
And things are different, like in, say, France, for instance. I mean, think about President Macron and his wife. They're 25, I believe 25 years difference in age. He met her while he was in high school. He was in the drama department. He was a student, a young 14, 15-year-old boy, and she was probably a married woman at that time. And she was his teacher. They fell in love. And they're talking about Donald Trump and the woman that that he's supposedly had an affair with, and yet no one's talking about Macron and his wife. And look what happened when he was in high school, and she made a pass at him, and he made a pass at her. And you know, this is a young boy. They got married. He's now the president of France. But why aren't people talking about that? It seems like in Europe, it's more or less acceptable, you know, having affairs. You know, they're the prime ministers, the presidents, you know, whatever, you know, in different countries in Europe. And I wonder how you mentioned something about Catherine Deneuve, how she feels about what the United States and Americans are doing.
Well, she did say about the Me Too movement that she felt it is taken out of its place. It's, as we were just discussing, that the line is drawn where it's encompassing sexual harassment is turned into sexual misconduct, sexual assault, and that there is a definite difference between harassment or flattery or a compliment or somebody trying to just be friendly or an inappropriate joke or an inappropriate gift than somebody actually forcibly doing something to someone. Yes,
So
but there were a lot of repercussions. You know, that was part of what I call the collateral damage, is that it was detrimental to her career. And she had to retract a lot of the things that she said or define them in a different context because she wanted to still be a viable actress, working actress. And a lot of the Me Too movement don't want to hear that there is another side. This is the way that it is, and you either belong to this or you don't, and if you don't, we will find a way to get you out of whatever you're doing.
Like it's happened in Hollywood. If you're a Democrat in Hollywood, you get all the parts and everything. And if you're a Republican, they don't like Republicans. You have to be a Democrat. And actresses like Scarlett Johansson and other actors, you know, are not getting parts because they're strong conservatives. So it's almost the same thing that's going on.
It's political.
Yeah, it's very political.
It's very, very political, that you have to have that mainstream viewpoint. You're either with us or you're against us. I mean, I look at it back to possibly the McCarthy era, you know, where they were just focusing on certain people that actually weren't in the in group, and they were trying to find out about their lives and, you know, talking to friends and coworkers, and their careers were ruined overnight. They could never work again. Or if they did work, they had to work under an assumed name. And, you know, there were a couple of films about that.
Right.
But not the capacity that they had been. So it's becoming like the witch hunt.
Yes.
In some ways. But don't get me wrong. I mean, I feel that women who have been victimized in the true sense of victimization should always come forward. And, you know, maybe in a timely fashion would be the way to do it. But it's just, like we're talking about, the line is just going, it's either black or white. as far as the gray areas
Right.
of all this happening
They're-
right
yeah,
now.
and I think they're not focusing on the gray areas. It's either one way or the other, and I think, and I think that's why, the Me Too movement is a good movement because in ways because it'll help people that were assaulted, raped, or really damaged to come forward and not to be afraid and not to wait like 10, 12 plus years before they come talking about it, come forward. But then again, they have to differentiate between somebody that's really been assaulted from the woman that had just been, say, a compliment, or somebody that just, got a hug. They have to differentiate between that, and I think maybe that's the problem right now. It's two different things, and maybe that's what Catherine Deneuve was really speaking about. And they, sometimes when there's a movement, they don't want to hear the other side. They only want to hear, let's just focus, on this side of it.
Right. They don't give anyone else the opportunity. We just have a few minutes left. In closing, where do you see this happening? Where do you see it going? 2018. I still see it continuing on from 2017,
Right.
that it's the rise and fall of a lot of people who have power.
Yes. I know I belong to Mensa, and for years we've had this, way before these movements, you wore different colored signs. Either you can hug me, you have to ask permission, or don't touch me.
I like that.
We'll all wear a sign.
And then you think to yourself, why did I do that? I don't care.
Maybe 16 under, don't touch. Maybe 70, need a little touching here.
Let me get a good
but it depends. Every female is different, and every male is different.
That's
I think.
true. That's
And
true. Let me think about it.
I know. Women are opening the doors for me, and men are slamming them in my face.
Right.
They're like, I don't want to be accused of anything. Just leave me alone.
Right.
Yeah,
I never thought about that.
I think we need to talk about it, and I think that's what so it doesn't become like McCarthyism. Because I do think you're right. I didn't think about McCarthyism, but it's getting to sound like it.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to see maybe more shows like this. I'd like to, you have a show, I have a show. We need to bring it forward and maybe talk about it with other people and get it, hopefully other stations will start carrying it. And it needs room for discussion.
Yeah.
So it doesn't all go one way and without the other, because there's two sides. Remember, when people are getting divorced, it's his story, her story, and the real story. And that's what we need to do. We need to really examine it.
I think we should discuss this more often.
yes.
I think we should discuss it more often, and I think that the media has given voice to all of it, which is good.
Yes.
I mean, that's excellent, but a lot of the witnesses have not even come forward. They don't want their names mentioned.
No.
They don't want their identity known.
No.
And, how it works they don't have to divulge their sources. So how can somebody actually defend themselves against an anonymous allegation? And once somebody has been given that allegation, they're fired from everything that they even had touched.
Yes,
I mean, their corporation, they're no longer CEO.
Right.
The lawsuits
It could
had
really
Dana
destroy a lot
Their
of.
whole-
It could destroy a lot of lives.
Reputation is
reputations.
ruined, like,
Look
yeah.
at the people that like Charlie Rose. He's no longer on TV. He's no longer every club, or a lot of these people that belong to private clubs, country clubs. They're out of those clubs. They've had book signings. They're no longer. Their books
right.
are.
They can't allow their books to be sold. They can't allow their films to be
It's
shown.
not fair to
Right, absolutely.
too.
Well, thank you
There's two
for
sides
being
to
on
it.
my panel, both
Thank
of
you for having
It's
me.
our
Having us.
views, and these are only our views.
Yeah,
so I just wanted to do the disclaimer over there.
Think about it.
And it's a thought process on how it can be possibly changed or
Yes.
looked at a different way.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
for
having
Thank
us.
you for having us again.
Yes.
And we'll do that in the near future as well. We'll talk about